Welcome to the new My Football Club podcast. Hello and welcome again to the new My Football Club podcast. I'm your host, Augustine Sasso. I've got a great show for you today. I spoke to Lord Charles last week, and we talked about the then upcoming league fixture with Boreham Wood. Then, as suggested by one of our listeners, a walk down memory lane. First person we talk about is Brian Wolf, ex-great Fleet player. I sit and listen as Charles does his magic, painting a picture of a great Fleet player of the past. Then, in honor of 10-10-10, October 10th, 2010, we talk a little bit about players wearing the number 10 shirt. I get a lesson about the position versus the player and how it's done in England. And stick around for the usual highlights after the interview, as all the Fleet teams are in action. As always, you can email me with your comments at augustine.sasso@myfootballclub.co.uk. Here now is my interview with Lord Chaz.
Should we rock and roll?
Yeah. All right, let's get ready to go. Okay. So, tomorrow, Boreham Wood, and we have a new player, or new that once was old, Joe Howe. I believe we just signed him.
Yeah, Joe Howe. He made an appearance on loan for Gravesend and Northfleet back in the day when Andy Ford was manager. He was an MK Dons player then, I believe. Since then, he's been around a little bit. He was very young then. He's been with Welling, he's been with Fisher, he's been at Northampton. But I believe he's been training for several weeks with the Fleet and played in a reserve game, I understand, earlier this week. And by coming into the club, it gives Liam Day some options, particularly in defence, but he can also play in midfield. So he comes into the squad, which probably does need a little bit of boosting. Obviously, we're hoping for the return of Scott Ginty sometime soon in the forward line department, and Scott was telling us in the radio commentary last week that he hopes to be back possibly this week, maybe playing off the substitutes bench. But whilst we've seen Joe Howe come in, we've waved au revoir to Ugo Udoji and to Tyrone Seeley, who I think their opportunities were very limited, and Liam has said, maybe it's better if you look for another club. So they've left. Joe Howe's come in, and Liam's been using words this week in the build-up to Boreham Wood, such as momentum. And I think he's looking to keep that momentum going, and one way of doing that is to bring a new face into the squad every now and again, just to keep everybody on their toes, and I think Joe will do that.
Wow, okay. I get the momentum part, but the bringing a new player every now and then, that's interesting. And
I think it really relates to competition for places. On one hand, if you're a little bit stretched, we're going to, obviously, as the season wears on, we're going to start to see, injuries playing a part, as we saw Derek Duncan was out for a while. We saw Clint Easton out for a while. Then you're going to get suspensions playing a part. So, you're going to need players as cover anyway. And then when everybody's fit, you've got good competition for places. And, a successful side, it's amazing. When a side is successful, players seem to make dramatic recoveries from injury, and they seem to stay fitter a lot longer because they know that if they lose their place in the side, it's going to be tough to get back in again.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, of course, when we saw Tyrone Seeley in preseason, he had a fantastic goal, and he looked really good. He was very exciting. But
he was exciting, but I think what's changed is we've seen the return of Ricky Shakes, since Tyrone burst onto the scene in pre-season. And Ricky Shakes has come back to the club, and I think probably is edged in front of Tyrone, which is unlucky for Tyrone. But I think, Liam obviously has got an affinity with Ricky to bring him back again. And Ricky's been playing pretty well. And Ricky and Tyrone are very similar kinds of players, so perhaps there was only room for one player of that type in the squad.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And, let's talk a little bit about Boreham Woods. I saw somewhere they've got a very tall player, if I get that right. 6'7" player, if I'm not, if I get my facts right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could sign somebody from the WWE, and he might be 6'7". Whether he can play football or not is another matter. Now, this particular guy, we know he can do a little bit because he's been training at Gillingham, so I understand. And also, we saw him actually perform against the Fleet last season when he was playing for Grays. And certainly in the games against Grays last year, the Fleet came out on top in both games, much to Preston Edwards' embarrassment now, I think. But this fella, whose name escapes me, I've got to be honest, but he's big, he's mobile, he's strong, and he's going to cause one or two problems. But, of course, a lot of that is going to be down to the service he gets. And if we can prevent him getting the ball where he can do the damage, and as Liam says, hey, we've got some big guys ourselves. So, I'm sure there's a plan hatched in training, where the thoughts of everybody, not just defenders, but everybody in the team will be on how we can stop this guy. But also other players they've got, such as Joe Benjamin, who was recently with the Fleet, and he was let go, and he's gone to Boreham Wood as well. They've got some players up there that are beginning to spark something of a revival. They beat Dartford recently, so they're no slouches. I mean, that was something we couldn't do when we played at Prince's Park. So, all credit to them. They may be bottom of the league, but they're going to create problems. And they're going to create problems maybe that we've not experienced against other sides. But it's going to be a fascinating game. I can't wait to get up there. And, then we've got them again next week in the FA Cup, which is extraordinary, an amazing coincidence. But as Liam said to me after the game last Saturday, he said, Boreham Wood doesn't hold too many good memories for me because I think we lost there in the FA Trophy early in his reign at Stonebridge Road when there was one terrible goalkeeping howler that really gave Boreham Wood the game. And we left there with our towels between our legs. And Liam said to me last week, he said, after that game, a number of people were calling for my head. And he said, including you, Chaz, I believe. And I laughed like a drain because I certainly don't recall doing that at the time. But Liam had a cheeky smile on his face when he said that. But I think he'll want to go to Boreham Wood tomorrow and rewrite history and come away with 3 points and with a much better feeling of his visit to Hertfordshire.
Yes, I agree. Here's the name of that player. I looked it up while you were talking. Fola Onibuje. Am I right?
Fola Onibuje. It's easy for you to say, but I'm just breaking these teeth in for a friend. But he is one big guy. I mean, he wouldn't be out of place in an NBA side. But he is strong. He is mobile. He can play. Don't be mistaken. This guy can play. But last year in a struggling Grey side, he himself found it hard to make an impact on the opposition. For Boreham Wood, who are managed by the former Arsenal player, Ian Allison, if they can get their game together and continue their revival, we're going to have our hands full. But it's all going to be about not just containing him, but it's about what we can do at the other end. And, with a Callum Willock, who, every game is turning in fantastic performances. It's not just about scoring goals for Callum. It is about how he brings other players in and how he lays the ball off, his flicks onto other players. He had one effort denied at close range last week with a one-handed save by the keeper. You know, he's a tremendous player, and he's going to cause Boreham Wood some problems, and they're going to be as concerned about him as the Fleet are concerned about Onabuji.
Sure, and of course, they're playing at home. They are 20th out of 22 teams. The pressure's going to be on them, and they'll be dangerous.
Yeah, what we all wonder, though, is what does this, result tomorrow, whether it's win, lose or draw, what does that do in terms of influencing, what goes on next week in the FA Cup? If, say, the Fleet were to win tomorrow, does that mean that they go into the game next week with the upper hand? Does it mean they could be complacent? I just think it's fascinating, to have the opposition the same in 2 consecutive games like this. It really is extraordinary.
Oh yeah. I mean, I agree, and I would say if we win tomorrow, forget that game, and start over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Wow.
The interesting thing about Boreham Wood, I don't know if everybody knows that follows the podcast, but the ground is only a couple of hundred yards away from a film studio, the Elstree Studios, which is where the big BBC TV soap opera EastEnders is filmed, and it's also where they've got a soundstage there where they have the UK version of Big Brother was made up until this summer when it finished, and it's quite a hotbed of an entertainment complex. So you never know, if there's somebody off duty in between scenes, they might wander over and take in the game tomorrow.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff. I always love to hear that kind of trivia. Yeah,
there you go.
Fascinating.
I'm great on trivia and not so good on facts.
Right.
You know me, I'm a journalist, There's lies in statistics, and a journalist never lets the facts get in the way of a good story.
All right. Well, okay, moving right along. Let's see. So what I wanted to talk to you about was, where are my notes?